It's always good to see you. Doesn't mean I'm going to call on you. I always do. There's a big contrast between House Democrats and House Republicans, between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, between Team Normal and Team Extreme. What Team Normal is doing, the Democrats, led by President Biden, is to continue to improve the American economy for everyday Americans. Here's the Biden track record on the economy. Economic growth is up, inflation is down. Wages are up, gas prices are down. Job creation is up. More than 10 million good-paying jobs created during President Biden's first 2 years, a record in modern American history. And small business startups have grown by the largest number during President Biden's first 2 years in office than at any other point in recorded American history. The Democrats, Team Normal, delivering for everyday Americans. What are the Republicans doing? Team Extreme, the team consisting of extremists who are willing to detonate the American economy, blow up Social Security and Medicare, and impose a 30% sales tax on the hardworking people of America. You can't make this stuff up. That's what they want to do. A 30% sales tax on the American people. What would be the consequence of that? It would be a tax hike on 90% of everyday Americans, while at the same time cutting taxes for the wealthiest 1% in America. That's what they're spending their time doing. Team Extreme. Extreme MAGA Republicans. And by the way, they want to lecture us about fiscal responsibility. 25% of the nation's debt was incurred during the 4 years of the Trump presidency. We've been around this great country of ours for 247 years. But Team Extreme, the extreme MAGA Republicans, they want to lecture the country on fiscal responsibility when 25% of the nation's debt incurred during 4 years of the Trump presidency. What's Team Normal's record? What is the Biden administration's record on fiscal responsibility? Cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in the last 2 years. Another record in American history. Questions?
Speaker McCarthy is threatening to have a House vote to remove Congressman Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. Are you confident that all Democrats will oppose the resolution when it comes to the floor?
We haven't had an internal conversation about it. I strongly support the notion that Democrats, as the Steering and Policy Committee has done this week, should be able to put forward its slate of committee assignments, which includes Representative Ilhan Omar to Foreign Affairs, and that should be accepted by House Republicans, as opposed to a revenge tour as part of some deal that apparently was cut with the extreme MAGA Republican wing, including the Congresswoman from Georgia.
Thank you. Obviously, we've had this question of documents of the president, documents of former presidents, Vice President Pence. Back in the 90s, John Deutsch, the CIA director, Sandy Berger, National Security Advisor. Doesn't this tell us that there's a problem with the way these documents are handled, or perhaps the law or the policies need to change? What can be done to address that? There's a
Well, it's my understanding that some of the relevant committees of jurisdiction and members who may be on those committees of jurisdiction are going to take a look at the totality of the issue through the lens, hopefully, not as an issue for one party or the other, but as an issue that we should just address as a Congress on behalf of the American people, and I think that's a reasonable thing to take a look at.
And you're brand new, obviously, to getting this special level of intelligence briefings and things. With this going on right now, has this added another layer of concern when you go in and get a briefing or get documents, or how you handle them because this has been going on in the past couple of weeks?
Well, the manner in which members of Congress, in my understanding, will continue to be briefed by the intelligence community or other intelligence officials throughout the spectrum of the federal government is that we go down to a secure location located here in the Capitol. Your cell phone cannot be brought in to that secure location. You have an opportunity to review documents that are physically there, and you don't have an ability, nor should you, in my view, to remove those documents as members of Congress. That's a process that has existed, as I understand it, for decades, and it seems to me that that's a reasonable process for us to continue.
Just back to the issue on the committee, besides Ilhan Omar, with respect to Shen and Swalwell, do you plan to appeal this? Have you talked to the speaker or plan to try to appeal this in any way, or are you just going to let it stand?
Yeah, we had an exchange of letters, both of which are in the public domain. The speaker articulated his position. We articulated our position, and I think those letters speak for themselves at this moment.
So no further action at this point?
Letters speak for themselves at this moment.
Where are Democrats on the idea of a discharge petition on a clean debt ceiling? And there's been some reporting you've had some productive conversations with McCarthy. Does that bode well for some sort of compromise to avoid the default?
Well, on the general issue, our view has always been, and certainly my philosophy, is that we must continue to try to find common ground with the other side of the aisle whenever and wherever possible to solve problems on behalf of the American people. We were sent to Washington, first and foremost, I believe, as Americans, not as Democrats or Republicans. And so I look forward to continuing to be able to do that, as we've done in the past, including when I was involved in helping to negotiate criminal justice reform with the Trump administration. And I've never been bashful about criticizing the Trump administration, but we should find common ground to make progress for the American people. And so I hope we'll continue to be able to do that generally, including by continuing to have a very productive relationship with the Speaker of the House, and I wish him a happy birthday. With respect to the debt ceiling issue, however, we've been pretty clear. We believe that America has incurred debts authorized by the Congress. And when you incur your debts, you have to pay your bills. By the way, 25% of which were incurred during a 4-year period of time. This is extraordinary by the Trump administration. He ran up trillions of dollars of debt, and now the extreme MAGA Republicans don't want us to pay those bills. And if we fail to pay those bills as a country, there are going to be big problems for everyday Americans, for Social Security, for Medicare, for veterans' benefits, and for the health, the safety, and the well-being economically of the American people. So we don't have any option here. We can have a conversation about future spending, which is why Leader Schumer, and I support this position, has consistently said to the extreme MAGA Republicans, show us the plan. What is your plan to address your concerns? Is it to radically cut Social Security? Show us the plan. Radically cut Medicare? Show us the plan. Drastically diminish veterans' benefits? Show us the plan. They want to have a conversation, and we don't even have a document in front of us for which to have a discussion around what future investments in the American people should look like. I can tell you, we support Social Security strongly. We support Medicare strongly. We support veterans' benefits strongly. And we don't believe that America should default on its debt and fail to pay bills that have already been incurred.
Republicans are having some trouble being able to pass a border security bill. A number of Republicans are concerned on asylum, undocumented migrants being able to claim asylum at ports of entry. There are a couple of Democrats actually right now outside having their own press conference on the Senate side and House members.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. We have a big team. We can cover a number of things. But they're also pushing back on Biden's new plan that would also limit asylum claims, saying that that goes too far. You're not on that letter that they sent to the White House, and neither is Schumer. And I just wanted to understand why that is, and what is the Democrats' majority position on this front?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen the letter, but we look forward to, as Democrats and as members of Congress, to having a healthy discussion about how do we deal with the complexity of issues connected to comprehensive immigration reform and making sure we have a safe, secure, and strong border. And I think that President Biden and the administration want to continue to try to address this issue in a forward-looking way. As House Democrats, we certainly want to do that. But we do need common sense partners on the other side of the aisle to have a reasonable discussion about immigration-related issues and border security. What we have is Team Extreme. Extreme MAGA Republicans who, by the way, are putting forth a bill that their own members don't even support, which is why on border security, we were supposed to see legislation put forth, I believe, by the distinguished gentleman from Texas that consistently has been pulled. So Team Extreme needs to get it together on their own side before we can even have a discussion with the extreme MAGA Republicans about how we deal with an important issue for the American people. Second row.
You mentioned that you think that the Republican economic agenda is extreme, but I want to get your thoughts on some of the rhetoric, especially on this anti-woke kick that some Republicans like Jim Banks are on. Do you think that those views are extreme? He's talked about starting an anti-woke caucus and really just making sure that House Republicans really speak on that issue, and some activists believe that, you know, that could be just as problematic as some of the economic ideas that they have. And speaking of threats to democracy, I wanted to get your thoughts on Meta reinstating Donald Trump, given your thoughts on how you feel he's a threat to democracy as well.
Well, I mean, I think the issue in terms of the concerns, the danger, the threats to democracy related to Donald Trump speak for themselves. And I think many of us will probably have more to say about that, to the extent that, you know, he moves forward with his so-called presidential campaign. It happens to be a very low-energy campaign, by the way. But in terms of the other issues, look, there are people in this town running for office, as I understand it, in different parts of the country, who apparently seem to believe that perhaps dividing America or leaning into extreme narratives that don't have anything to do with historical reality perhaps might advance, you know, their own personal aspirations. I don't know. I think you've got to talk to these individuals. I think it's ridiculous. You have you have an education and labor committee, which should be a forum to be able to meaningfully address providing the highest quality education to the American people all across the country, small town America, urban America, rural America, suburban America, ex-urban America, and Appalachia. That's what Democrats support, Team Normal. That's what we support. How do we make sure, as we did in the CHIPS and Science Act, that the young people in America have the skills to succeed in the 21st century economy by leaning into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what House Democrats support. High quality education. And, you know, the burning book crowd is just going to have to speak for themselves. Eric?
A couple weeks into this Congress now, how is your relationship with the Speaker developing? I think I read this morning you guys are texting buddies now.
No, we've had a very positive, forward-looking relationship. And, I hope and expect that will continue. And we're going to continue to try and find common ground whenever and wherever possible. And it is important, I think, for there to be consistent communication between House Democrats and House Republicans at every level. And that consistent communication has been robust as between Speaker McCarthy and myself. We'll always, as he said publicly and I've said publicly, try to find opportunities to partner, but we're going to agree to disagree and strongly disagree on several issues, as we have with respect to the Intel Committee assignments. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to find common ground. It's my view, whenever and wherever possible, when we can make a meaningful difference for the American people. By the way, that's what Speaker Pelosi has always done. That's what Leader Schumer has always done. President Biden certainly has always done that, which is why many of our successful legislative accomplishments, gun safety legislation for the first time in American history, the Respect for Marriage Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, they were all bipartisan, mostly in the Senate, but a handful of Republicans supporting our efforts in the House as well. So we have a track record that demonstrates our willingness to find common ground. And if I can be part of extending that track record, having a working relationship with Speaker McCarthy, I think that's the responsible thing to do for the American people. I'll go to the third row because I've been a little front row heavy here. Okay.
You had called for a postmortem on what happened in New York after the election. We're about 2 months out now. Do you see any progress on that postmortem and any evaluations as to what has happened?
Well, I think it is our hope as a delegation. We're a little bit less than a month into the year. And by delegation, I'm referring to the New York delegation, to have a serious, substantive conversation with the governor and with Chairman Jay Jacobs sooner rather than later about the after-action analysis that I believe is underway, has been completed in some areas, but independently, I know the members of the New York delegation are going to have our own thoughts about what needs to happen so that there's a better outcome in New York in 2024.
Last question.
Go to the back. All right, so I'll go to the second row here.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about...
We'll do the two of you. Yeah, okay.
So some of your members from the Midwest held a press conference yesterday, the Heartland caucus led by Jim Kimmel. They're saying that they want more representation in leadership, as I'm sure you're aware of. I just want to ask, what kind of dialogue are you having with your members to make sure everyone feels like their voice is heard within the caucus?
I had a very good conversation with Representative Dingell about this yesterday, a very good conversation earlier this morning with Representative Marcy Kaptur. I respect both of them. They really do authentically care about, as do all of us, but they authentically care about the Heartland communities that they effectively represent. And I think we've got some pretty strong representatives within House Democratic leadership from the Heartland. Dan Kildee, co-chair of Steering and Policy from the great state of Michigan, battleground frontline member, but he's at the leadership table and he's going to work with us on these issues. Dean Phillips from Minnesota, co-chair, Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. He obviously represents a Heartland state, cares deeply about these issues. He's at the leadership table. We're going to continue to work strongly with him. Lauren Underwood represents an exurban district in Illinois, Heartland state. She's co-chair of Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. She's going to be deeply involved in this effort. So we've got some pretty strong Heartland representation at the leadership table that will continue to be sensitive to these issues. But we look forward to lifting up all parts of America. That's the thing about House Democrats. We actually just care about making life better for everyday Americans. Lower costs, better paying jobs, safer communities. People over politics. That is what unites us. as House Democrats. And we will lean into doing that in the heartland of America. Okay, last question.
So, speaking of common ground, the weaponization of government subcommittee. We saw the Republican names this week. When do you expect to have Democrat names for that? And how big of a role do you feel like Democrats are going to be able to play?
It's my expectation that we will be actively involved in pushing back against any efforts to obstruct justice through the weaponization subcommittee or to protect insurrectionists through the weaponization of government subcommittee, and you'll have names sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Welcome to the Belmarsh Tribunal. I want to welcome all the people in this room, a particularly significant room, given that it was here almost exactly 13 years ago that Julian Assange released his collateral murder video of WikiLeaks. I'll talk about that in a moment. But thank you to all of you, as well as all of the people who are viewing on the democracynow.org live stream, people around the world. I'm Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now!, which airs on 1,500 public television and radio stations around the world, and on the internet at democracynow.org. It is absolutely critical that as journalists we speak out on this critical issue of press freedom. The Belmarsh Tribunal was convened by the Progressive International and the WOW